My dad gave me a 3-page itemized bill for $67,893 for raising another man's child and emptied my college fund after learning I wasn't his biological son, then kicked me out with trash bags. But I discovered he'd been draining my college fund for 13 years to pay for his secret second family in Riverside, where he had 2 kids and had stolen $127,000 total while making us think we were too poor to afford anything. And grandfather left evidence of everything in a safety deposit box before he died. My dad denied me my college fund after discovering I wasn't his biological son until I found the secret second family my savings had been supporting. Growing up, my dad was everything I wanted to be. He'd wake up at 5 a.m. to make pancakes shaped like dinosaurs, taught me to ride a bike in our driveway, and never missed a single baseball game. At family barbecues, he'd pull me close and tell everyone, family sticks together no matter what. He said it so often I could mouth the words along with him. The morning everything changed started like any other. I was 18, excited about starting college in the fall. My siblings had both gone to state university with dad paying for everything. I walked into the kitchen ready to discuss my own plans when I found my parents sitting at opposite ends of the table, a stack of papers between them. Dad's face was carved from stone. He slid a paper across to me, an itemized list stretching back 18 years. Diapers, $2,847. Formula, $3,200. Little League registration, $450. The list went on for 3 pages. At the bottom, circled in red, total, $67,893. That's what I've spent raising another man's child, he said, voice cracking with rage. Your mother finally decided to tell me the truth last night. After 18 years of pretending you were mine, I already emptied your college fund and applied it to what you owe me. You can either pay back the rest or I'll take you to court. Real families support each other. Strangers pay their own way. Mom's face crumpled. Please, David, don't. He held up his hand. 18 years of lies is enough. From that day forward, I became a ghost in my own home. Dad removed my photos from the living room wall. The first night, Mom set 4 plates for dinner out of habit, and Dad threw mine in the sink. He eats after we're done. Boarders don't eat with family. He changed the Wi-Fi password, removed me from the family phone plan, and started timing my kitchen use. 5 minutes, he'd announce. If I took 6, he'd flip the breaker. At dinner, I'd hear them laughing while I waited outside the kitchen for my turn. When discussing weekend plans, he'd say, when the 3 of us go to the lake. My brother Mark finally exploded, screaming about destroying our family. Dad's response chilled the room. I have 2 children. Your mother has 3. Mom would leave sandwiches outside my door at night. Sarah slipped 20s under my pillow with notes. I'm sorry. I got a warehouse job working nights after graduation since college didn't seem possible anymore. Started saving every penny. My co-workers became my real family, teaching me about cheap apartments, building credit, surviving on nothing. We've all been there, kid, they said, sharing their lunches. The only way out is through. The breaking point came at my grandmother's 75th birthday. Dad locked me in my room that morning, taking the doorknob off. Family events are for family, he said. I heard cars arriving, voices filling the house. Sarah whispered through the door that Dad told everyone I was away on a trip, so I used a hidden screwdriver to work the hinges off. The moment I walked into the living room, my grandmother lit up. There's my baby. David said you were traveling. I looked straight at Dad's stunned face and said, he's been charging me for being born. Everyone laughed, thinking it was a joke. Then I pulled out the itemized list, unfolding all 3 pages. The laughter died as they saw Dad's handwriting, the columns of numbers, the total circled in red. My grandmother had to sit down. David, what is this? The room erupted. Uncles shouting, aunts crying, cousins staring in horror. My grandmother kept saying, how could you? While Dad stood there, face burning red. The party emptied within 20 minutes. That night, he formally evicted me. When I came home from work the next day, the locks were changed and my belongings were in trash bags on the lawn. I spent a month sleeping on a mattress in my sleazy co-worker's living room, paying weekly rent to a guy who'd stand too close, make comments about working out other arrangements. Mom would text me at 2 a.m., are you eating? Then send $20 through Venmo with apologies about how Dad checks the bank statements. Finally, I scraped together enough for a studio apartment, and it felt like things were starting to look up for me. And then my grandfather died. The will reading was the first time I'd seen Dad in months. He sat confident until the lawyer read, to my grandson whose father tried to erase him, I leave $50,000 for college and a safety deposit box. Dad left immediately. He was mad. At the bank, the box held not only the money, but also bank statements from an account labeled college fund, showing steady deposits for 15 years, then withdrawals starting when I was about 5. Every penny gone by now. There were receipts too. Mortgage payments for a house in Riverside, signed by David. I sat in my car piecing it together. The timing was too perfect. He'd been draining my college fund for 3 years, and suddenly when Mom tells him about the affair, he has this explosive reaction. I thought about how quickly he'd calculated that itemized bill, how prepared he seemed. I drove to the Riverside address and parked across from a normal house. A woman was outside with 2 kids, pushing a toddler on a swing while an older boy drew with chalk. David's truck pulled into the driveway shortly after, and the boy ran over screaming, "Daddy!" And David scooped him up, kissing the woman like he'd done it 1,000 times. The woman noticed me, pointed at my car, and said something to him. Our eyes met. He set the boy down and started walking toward me, but I threw the car in drive and pulled away, hands shaking. 3 blocks later, my phone buzzed. That itemized bill disappears if you never speak a word about what you just saw. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, staring at that text. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. The overtime shift at the warehouse started in an hour, but I couldn't move. Dad had planned this whole thing. The rage, the itemized bill, the eviction, all theater to hide his real betrayal. My phone buzzed again. Sarah needed a ride from downtown. Her text came through slurred with autocorrect autocorrect mistakes, something about a bad date and being stranded. I looked at the clock. If I went to get her, I'd miss my shift, but she'd slipped me money when Dad locked me out, whispered apologies through my bedroom door. The drive to pick her up took me past 3 ATMs, where I could have stopped to photograph Dad's text as evidence, but Sarah's messages kept coming, each more desperate. When I finally found her outside a closed restaurant, she stumbled into my car reeking of wine. During the drive back, she rambled about her evening, then suddenly grabbed my arm. She'd been covering for Dad's evening meetings for months, telling Mom he was at client dinners when he'd leave the house. She thought she was helping him land a promotion. Her words tumbled out between hiccups about how he'd promised to keep paying her tuition if she stayed quiet. My phone lit up with a call from Mom. Dad had already texted her about my stalking behavior at the Riverside house. Her voice cracked as she explained he was filing a restraining order, claiming I was harassing his client's family. She begged me to stay away, to let things calm down. In the background, I heard Dad's voice coaching her on what to say. Sarah passed out in the passenger seat as I pulled into her apartment complex. My boss had called twice about the missed shift. The co-worker who covered for me needed his rent money back by morning. Everything was falling apart at once, and Dad had orchestrated it perfectly. The next morning, I dragged myself to the warehouse to beg for my job back. My manager, Roberto, had worked there 30 years and seen everything. He listened to my scrambled explanation, then approved overtime for the next 2 weeks. The extra shifts would help, he said, sliding me a business card for his cousin who did cheap legal consultations. That evening, Dad's Facebook post went viral in our small town, praying for my troubled son during this difficult time. Mental health is so important. 47 comments poured in from church members, his co-workers, old family friends, everyone offering support, sharing stories about their own difficult children. Mark tried defending me in the comments, but deleted his posts an hour later. His private message explained everything. He's still paying my tuition. I can't risk it. I'm sorry. The bank finally returned my call about grandfather's safety deposit box. The manager confirmed Dad had been listed as co-owner and emptied it 3 days before grandfather died. The only evidence might be security footage, but they'd need a court order to release it. When I walked out of the bank, Dad's friend from the hardware store was parked across the street, phone aimed at me. The photo would surface later as proof of my obsession. Mom's promotion at the credit union hung in the balance. Her boss needed a character reference from her spouse, standard procedure for positions handling money. Dad had already scheduled the meeting, ready to play the supportive husband while holding her career hostage. My therapy appointment that week took a dark turn. Dr. Martinez, who'd seen me since middle school, mentioned my anger reminded her of when my uncle was hospitalized for paranoid episodes. I'd never heard about any uncle with mental health issues. When I pressed for details, she backtracked, saying she must have confused me with another patient. But the seed was planted. Dad screenshotted every text I'd sent my siblings since the eviction. In the family group chat, he reframed my desperate messages as harassment. I'm concerned about his fixation on our family. These texts come at all hours. He'd cropped out their responses, their offers to help. I wonder what Dad's real game is here, turning 18 years of memories into some kind of accounting ledger, like he's been keeping track all along. The timing of this whole thing feels too neat. Mom suddenly confessing right when he'd already emptied the college. Sarah and Mark stayed silent in the chat. I drove past the Riverside house twice that week, trying to photograph the property for evidence. The Neighborhood Watch Facebook page lit up with reports of a suspicious vehicle. Dad commented on each post, thanking neighbors for keeping our community safe without revealing the car was mine. One night, I discovered Dad still controlled our old Netflix account. The profile names made my stomach turn. The Riverside kids were listed as users, named after Dad's parents who died when I was 10. He'd been building this second life for years, using my grandparents' names like they belonged to his real family. 3 hours of sleep caught up with me at the warehouse. I sent a shipment to the wrong distribution center, costing the company thousands. Roberto covered for me, but his patience was wearing thin. You gotta get your head straight, kid. I can't protect you forever. My aunt called that night, withdrawing her offer to let me stay in her spare room. Her husband had threatened divorce if she got involved in David's mess. She cried as she explained, but I understood. Dad's reach extended everywhere. The coffee shop where I grabbed breakfast became unbearable. Regulars openly discussed David's unstable kid based on the town Facebook group. I recognized the barista from high school, saw her screenshot my order for her Instagram story. When the family drama follows you to work, she captioned it. Dad's first real mistake came when grandmother asked about the Riverside property. His rushed lie about an investment opportunity accidentally matched the county record dates. He'd been too careful for too long, and the pressure was making him sloppy. Jake's dad owned a construction company that survived on contracts from Dad's firm. When Jake admitted he couldn't hang out anymore, he broke down crying. His family needed those contracts to avoid bankruptcy. I want to help, but I can't let my family lose everything. I thought I'd found proof when I discovered Dad had lied about a client dinner on March 15th. The Riverside mortgage payment cleared that same day. But reviewing my own calendar revealed I'd misremembered 5 other dates. Trauma had made my memory unreliable, and Dad knew it. Roberto's cousin, the lawyer, met me at a diner to review my options. The consultation was free, but his face said everything. Without concrete evidence, I was just an angry kid lashing out at the man who'd raised me. The burden of proof sat squarely on my shoulders. That weekend, I caught Dad's co-worker filming me at the grocery store. I'd found a discrepancy in Dad's story. He claimed to be at a conference in Chicago, but his credit card showed local charges. My small celebration in the parking lot, pumping my fist at this tiny victory, would later surface as evidence of my mental instability. Mom finally broke down during a secret meeting at a truck stop. She couldn't leave Dad until my debt was settled. He'd already consulted lawyers about suing her for enabling the 18-year deception. Every path forward led through him. The walls kept closing in. Each day brought new humiliations, fresh evidence of how thoroughly Dad had poisoned my life. But I kept Roberto's business card in my wallet, kept saving those overtime checks, kept documenting everything I could prove. Because somewhere in that safety deposit box, Grandfather had left more than money. He'd left evidence Dad couldn't destroy, threads Dad couldn't cut. I just had to survive long enough to find them. The next morning brought a new level of manipulation. Dad had started dating Ms. Peterson, my former English teacher who'd encouraged me to apply for college scholarships. She showed up at the coffee shop where I grabbed breakfast, her face lighting up with genuine concern. She touched my shoulder gently, asking about my college plans, quoting lines from my favorite book we'd studied together. The way she spoke made it clear Dad had painted himself as a struggling single father dealing with a troubled son. She believed every word. I watched her leave in Dad's truck, saw how she looked at him with sympathy and admiration. He'd found someone who remembered me as a good student, someone whose testimony would carry weight if needed. The calculation behind it made my skin crawl. That afternoon, I ran into Dad outside the pharmacy. He stood close enough that other customers could hear, speaking calmly about how worried he was, how I'd threatened him the night before. I hadn't seen or spoken to him in days. When I protested, he pulled out his phone, showing a text I'd never sent. My number, my name, but not my words. The pharmacist watched nervously as Dad expressed concern about my episodes. Sarah called that night, her voice shaking. Dad had found an old text from 2 years ago where I'd written to Mom during a fight. Sometimes I wish I had a different dad. He was adding it to some kind of legal filing, proof of long-standing resentment. Sarah had seen the paperwork on his desk, along with other messages taken out of context, building a narrative of an ungrateful child who'd always rejected him. The grocery store incident happened 3 days later. I was buying ramen when I heard a small voice behind me. The Riverside boy, maybe 7 years old, stood with a store clerk. He pointed at me and said matter-of-factly that his daddy said they couldn't talk about their other brother. The clerk's eyes widened. She worked nights at the warehouse too, would definitely spread this story. The boy didn't understand what he'd revealed, just grabbed his cereal and wandered back to his mom. Sarah took a massive risk that week. She secretly shared Grandmother's doorbell camera password with me. The footage from the night before Grandfather's death showed Dad arriving at 11 p.m., pacing on the porch, running his hands through his hair. He'd been inside for 2 hours. When he left, he carried a box, the same size as the safety deposit contents. Grandfather had died of a heart attack the next morning. I made the mistake of going to the courthouse to research property records. The clerk recognized me, her expression hardening as she explained that repeated requests for the same information could constitute harassment. Dad had already been there, expressing concern about my fixation on his client's properties. She warned that accusations without proof were serious, that I could face charges myself if I continued down this path. My hands trembled as I remembered Grandfather's last email to me. He'd sent his password hints months ago, saying he wanted me to have access just in case. I'd ignored it then, too focused on graduation. Now, logging into his account revealed a history that made my stomach drop. He'd been researching DNA test kits, private investigators, asset protection. The search dates aligned with when Dad's withdrawals from my college fund had accelerated. Grandfather had known something was wrong. His email drafts contained half-written messages to Dad demanding documentation for various investments. One draft mentioned discrepancies in tax returns. Another referenced a conversation about the Riverside property. All dated weeks before his death, none ever sent. Dad's Riverside mortgage payments lined up with every major crisis in my childhood. When I'd broken my arm at 8, needed surgery. When Mom's car died and stranded us for a week. When the roof leaked and destroyed the living room. Every time Dad had said money was tight, he'd been paying for his other family. The church counselor called me in for a meeting. Dad had filed a formal complaint about my concerning fixation on his family. She had no choice but to document our conversation, she explained, her face full of reluctant sympathy. She'd known me since I was 5, but procedures were procedures. The meeting would go in a file, another piece of evidence that I was unstable. I tried recording conversations after that, but technology betrayed me. The app crashed whenever I needed it most, usually making an obvious notification sound that made Dad smirk. He knew I was trying to gather evidence and stayed just careful enough to avoid giving me anything concrete. The school situation hit hard. Dad still had pickup rights for Sarah, even though she could drive herself. He used this leverage, showing up every day, making Mom stand there and smile while other parents watched. If she didn't play along, if she showed any defiance, he'd make comments about her emotional instability loud enough for others to hear. The threat was clear: cooperate or lose her reputation along with everything else. The hardware store job had been my backup plan. The owner, Mr. Chen, had known me since I was kid, always saved the easy shifts for local teens, but an anonymous complaint about an unstable employee ended that. Mr. Chen apologized as he let me go, said his insurance company gave him no choice. I recognized Dad's phrasing in the complaint letter Mr. Chen reluctantly showed me. Dad's cruelest move involved Grandfather's belongings. He organized a family day to clean out Grandfather's storage unit, making sure I wasn't invited, but I watched from across the street as they loaded boxes. Dad wore Grandfather's jacket, the one that smelled like his cologne and pipe tobacco. Seeing him in it triggered a memory. Grandfather wearing that jacket when he'd quietly slipped me money for school supplies, whispering not to tell Dad. The ultimatum came through Mark. Dad would forget everything, the itemized bill, the debt, all of it, if I signed away any claim to inheritance and moved out of state. 24 hours to decide. Mark delivered the message with tears in his eyes, begging me to take it, to just start over somewhere else. I refused. Within hours, Dad posted on social media about offering olive branches, only to have them thrown back. The comments poured in about ungrateful children, about parents who try their best, about the importance of forgiveness, using an English teacher, fake texts, and even his secret 7-year-old as pieces. Nothing says loving father quite like weaponizing your kid's favorite teacher and turning grocery shopping into psychological warfare. Each comment felt like another brick in the wall he was building around me. The security footage from the bank should have been my breakthrough, but when I finally got a lawyer to request it, we discovered the camera angle was wrong. It showed grandfather entering, yes, but not what was removed from the box. I'd been right about the meeting, but wrong about the details, and those small errors made everything else I said seem questionable. Mom's revelation came during another late-night call. Grandfather had suspected the second family for years, but kept quiet to protect grandmother from the truth. He'd been gathering evidence slowly, carefully, not wanting to destroy the family unless absolutely necessary. His loyalty to keeping the family intact had ultimately cost me everything. The supposed proof about diverted funds turned another direction entirely. Bank records showed large withdrawals, yes, but they aligned with medical bills from the Riverside woman's cancer treatment 2 years ago. Dad had been helping a sick woman and her children. It looked noble on paper, even if the money had come from my college fund. The truth was more complicated than simple theft. Sarah faced an impossible choice when her college registration came due. Supporting me meant losing her education. She sat in my apartment crying, torn between loyalty and her future. I told her to take the money, to stay quiet. She chose her education, but promised to record Dad whenever possible, though we both knew how little that would matter without context. My investigation tactics grew desperate. I created fake social media accounts to befriend the Riverside woman's sister, learned their routines, their history. A carefully orchestrated, accidental meeting at a coffee shop led to a conversation about weather, local events, anything to build trust, while memorizing every detail about the timeline. The cloud storage discovery happened by accident. Dad had forgotten to remove me from an old shared folder. His journal entries appeared, years of them. Building the life I deserved, he'd written, making up for lost time. Entries about feeling trapped, about wanting more, about deserving better than what life had given him. The entries predated Mom's confession by years. The Riverside woman's ex-husband complicated everything. He emerged wanting custody and child support, having discovered Dad's involvement. Now, Dad faced threats on multiple fronts, making him more dangerous, more desperate to discredit me before I could be used against him in that battle. My obsession with the custody case meant missing Mom's birthday dinner. I'd been at the law library researching precedents, lost track of time. The family photo posted later showed empty chairs, Dad's caption about missing pieces, gathering sympathy from relatives who'd once loved me. Another mark against me, another example of my selfishness. Credit cards maxed out from legal consultations while Dad cashed in my childhood savings bonds grandfather had bought for my future. Each small victory in finding evidence cost money I didn't have, while Dad used resources I'd never see to build his defense. The restaurant confrontation was my breaking point. Dad held court at his favorite steakhouse, the one where we'd celebrated every family milestone. I walked in to find him with clients, playing the devoted father, mentioning his troubled son with practiced sorrow. I stood there shaking, wanting to scream the truth. The waitress who'd served our family for 15 years looked between us, her face crumbling. I left without saying a word, but the damage was done. She'd never look at either of us the same way. Roberto finally had enough when I took too many personal calls during shifts. The replacement hired for my position turned out to be the son of Dad's golf buddy. I found myself sleeping in my car at a truck stop, scrolling through Dad's Facebook posts from my childhood bedroom where he'd staged family photos with Sarah and Mark, my absence explained as traveling for work. Mom's breaking point came during a particularly bad week. She showed up at my car, sobbing, begging me to let it go, to let Dad find peace. Her marriage, her job, her entire life hung by threads he controlled. She looked broken, aged 10 years in 6 months. I held her while she cried, both of us knowing I couldn't stop, not when I was this close to proving everything. The investigation's collateral damage spread wider than I'd imagined. Jake's dad lost the construction contract after being associated with our troubled family. The financial stress destroyed their marriage. Jake's parents separated, his little sister asking why I'd hurt their family. The guilt ate at me, but stopping meant letting Dad win. Sarah asked the question I'd been avoiding during one of our secret meetings. What if Mom had lied about when she told him? What if she'd confessed years earlier, and his reaction now was just accumulated rage finally boiling over? I couldn't answer immediately, the doubt creeping in like poison. Maintaining credibility meant admitting my own mistakes. Yes, I'd vandalized Dad's truck in high school after a fight. Yes, I'd said horrible things in anger. Each admission gave him ammunition, but lying would destroy any chance of being believed about the bigger truth. Grandfather's files revealed the worst truth yet. He'd been dropping hints for months, trying to get me to investigate on my own. Comments about family finances, questions about my college plans, suggestions to look into things. I'd ignored them all, too trusting, too naive. The evidence had been there if I'd just listened. Dad's lawyer filed emergency motions to advance court dates, while my legal aid attorney was handling 50 other cases. I found myself preparing to represent myself, studying law books at the library, knowing how outmatched I was but having no choice. The psychological complexity of Dad's motivation became clearer through old photos and documents. He genuinely wanted to be my father once. Pictures showed real joy, real love, before something twisted it into possession and control. The betrayal of learning I wasn't his biological child had broken something fundamental in him, turned love into a need to punish, to recoup losses, to balance some cosmic ledger only he could see. I learned to lie convincingly, to manipulate situations, to think 3 steps ahead. I became what he'd accused me of being because survival demanded it. The honest, trusting kid who'd walked into that kitchen months ago was gone, replaced by someone harder, more calculating. Evidence trickled in from unexpected sources. The Riverside woman's Instagram, carelessly public, showed timeline inconsistencies with Dad's claims. Photos placed them together years before he claimed the relationship started. Small victories felt hollow against the mounting losses. Seeing Dad cry at grandfather's grave during the monthly visit shattered something in me. We were both mourning the same man, both feeling betrayed, both convinced we were right. The tragedy was that we'd once been a real family, before secrets and lies poisoned everything. Dad's counterclaim gained traction, that I was stalking the Riverside family, traumatizing innocent children with my obsession. The truth twisted into something unrecognizable, but legally actionable. Everything hinged on Mom's testimony about the affair timeline, about when she'd really told him. The past haunted every interaction. I'd tutored the Riverside daughter in math 2 years ago, Dad bringing her to the library, introducing her as a client's child. She'd been sweet, struggling with fractions, calling me her favorite teacher. Now she asked her mom why I wouldn't visit anymore, adding another layer of guilt to my conscience. Mom's co-workers chose sides based on who controlled their financial futures. The credit union dealt with Dad's firm regularly. Supporting me meant risking their mortgages, their car loans, their children's futures. The practical choice was obvious, even if it meant enabling injustice. The judge's words during a preliminary hearing chilled me. Burden of proof meant documentation, evidence, concrete facts. Circumstantial evidence and emotional testimony wouldn't be enough. I needed papers, recordings, witnesses willing to testify under oath. The system favored those who could afford to work it. Grandfather's lawyer owed him a favor and quietly provided partial records, honoring last wishes while protecting his own career. The documents confirmed suspicions, but weren't enough alone. Each revelation led to more questions, more threads to follow, more money spent on searches and certificates and copies. The records painted a picture of grandfather's final months. He'd known about the second family, stayed quiet to protect grandmother from heartbreak. He'd been building a legal case, gathering evidence, preparing to confront Dad after grandmother passed. Death had come too soon, leaving me to finish what he'd started. The storage unit held the final pieces. Grandfather had hidden documents in places Dad wouldn't think to look. Inside old photo albums, taped under drawer bottoms, sewn into jacket linings. Financial records, correspondence, proof of the timeline. Evidence that Dad's deception went back years, that my college fund had been systematically drained long before Mom's confession. Grandfather's last days were documented in medical records and worried emails to lawyers. He'd been terrified of Dad's retaliation, had changed his will multiple times, added security cameras, taken precautions that seemed paranoid then, but made sense now. He'd chosen protecting grandmother over justice, family peace over truth, until death made the choice irrelevant. I committed to grandfather's approach despite my rage. Family first, even when it hurt, even when it meant playing a longer game, gathering evidence carefully, protecting the innocent while pursuing justice. The timing of Dad helping with cancer treatment while emptying college funds seems awfully convenient. Charity work makes a perfect cover story for moving money around, doesn't it? I wonder if anyone actually verified those medical bills, or just took them at face value because cancer makes people stop asking questions. The wild kid who'd wanted to scream the truth from rooftops learned patience, strategy, the power of silence. Dad's sworn affidavit contained the lie that would trap him. He'd claimed the Riverside relationship began after Mom's confession, a recent development, a response to betrayal. But the evidence showed otherwise. Years of payments, school registrations, medical records. His need to paint himself as the victim had made him careless with dates. I prepared my evidence methodically, organizing documents, creating timelines, building an undeniable case. No gloating, no drama, just facts presented clearly. Roberto's cousin had taught me that revenge was best served with documentation, not emotion. The pattern of financial abuse stretched back years. Every birthday check from relatives, every holiday gift, every dollar meant for my future had been diverted. The Riverside house payments matched to the penny what should have been in my college account. The mathematical precision of the theft almost impressed me. Both sides prepared for the final confrontation. Mom would have to testify about the affair, about when she'd really told Dad, about the years of deception on both sides. Her testimony would determine everything: my future, Dad's reputation, the fate of two families built on lies. The community watched, waiting to see which story they'd believe. Some had suspected Dad's double life for years, but stayed quiet. Others remained convinced I was an ungrateful child, lashing out at a heartbroken father. The truth would force everyone to choose sides, to admit what they'd known or ignored. I sat in my car outside the courthouse, evidence boxes in the back seat, knowing that justice wouldn't erase the scars. The dinosaur pancakes were gone forever. The baseball games couldn't be replayed. The father I'd idolized had never really existed, but maybe, just maybe, the truth could prevent future wounds. The engine idled as I gathered courage for what came next. Win or lose, the family I'd grown up in was gone. The question was whether anything could be salvaged from the wreckage, whether truth could somehow lead to healing, whether justice delayed could still be justice delivered. The records from grandfather's lawyer revealed everything I'd suspected. Grandfather had documented documented Dad's financial manipulations for years, keeping quiet to protect grandmother. Bank statements showed systematic transfers from my college fund to the Riverside mortgage starting when I was 5. Grandfather had confronted Dad once, received promises it would stop, then watched helplessly as the theft continued. The most damning evidence came from grandfather's handwritten notes, dated 3 weeks before his death. He tracked every withdrawal, every lie, every family event where Dad had claimed poverty while funding his second life. The final entry simply read, "David knows I know, taking precautions." I spent the next week organizing everything into a coherent timeline. Roberto's cousin reviewed the documents, his expression growing darker with each page. He explained the difference between civil and criminal fraud, helped me understand what charges might stick. The consultation stretched 3 hours past what I'd paid for, but he waved away my attempts to compensate him. Dad's next move caught me off guard. He showed up at the warehouse during my shift, speaking with Roberto about his concern for my mental state. Through the office window, I watched him gesture sympathetically, saw Roberto's face harden as Dad spun his narrative. When Dad left, Roberto called me in. He'd seen through the performance, but warned that Dad's influence was spreading. The storage unit yielded more evidence. Grandfather had hidden documents throughout his belongings, inside book covers, taped to furniture backs, sewn into coat linings. Each discovery painted a clearer picture of Dad's decade-long deception. School enrollment forms for the Riverside children dated back 8 years. Medical insurance cards listing Dad as the policyholder. A lease agreement from when the boy was an infant. Sarah risked everything to help me that week. She copied Dad's computer files while he showered, forwarding years of emails and financial records. The metadata alone proved Dad had been planning his shocked discovery of my paternity for months. He'd researched similar cases, calculated potential lawsuits, even drafted the itemized bill weeks before Mom's supposed confession. The turning point came when I discovered Dad's sworn affidavit contained a provable lie. He'd claimed the Riverside relationship began after learning about my paternity, a desperate attempt to find comfort after betrayal. But the evidence showed mortgage payments starting when I was 5, school registrations when I was 10, medical records throughout my childhood. His need to paint himself as the victim had created a paper trail of perjury. I presented everything to the district attorney's office. The prosecutor listened carefully, reviewed the documents, then explained the reality. Financial fraud cases within families rarely led to criminal charges. The emotional abuse, the systematic destruction of my life, none of it was technically illegal. My only recourse was civil court, and even that would be an uphill battle. The confrontation happened at the bank, of all places. I was depositing my overtime check when Dad walked in with the Riverside family. The woman's eyes widened when she saw me. The children hung back, confused by the tension. Dad stepped forward, ready to play the victim again, but I simply held up grandfather's evidence folder. His face went pale. What followed wasn't the dramatic scene I'd imagined. No shouting, no accusations, just Dad's slow realization that his carefully constructed lies were crumbling. The Riverside woman pulled her children outside. Other customers pretended not to notice. Dad's hands shook as he tried to maintain his composure. The mediation session came 2 weeks later. Dad's lawyer had convinced him to negotiate rather than face public exposure. We sat across a conference table while lawyers discussed numbers and percentages. Dad wouldn't meet my eyes. When they proposed a settlement, partial reimbursement of my college fund in exchange for my silence, I almost laughed. After everything, he still thought he could buy his way out. I refused the deal. The lawyer warned about the cost of litigation, the uncertainty of outcomes, the damage to everyone involved. But grandfather hadn't gathered all that evidence for me to stay quiet. Some things mattered more than money. The Riverside woman reached out through her lawyer. She'd known about our family all along, but convinced herself she wasn't hurting anyone. Now, facing the reality of what her children had been part of, she wanted to make things right. Her testimony would confirm the timeline, the financial arrangements, the years of deception. Mom finally found her courage during a meeting with her lawyer. She documented Dad's threats, his financial control, his manipulation of her career. Her voice grew stronger as she described years of emotional imprisonment. The lawyer explained her options, divorce proceedings that would expose everything, protection orders to ensure her safety, forensic accounting to trace the stolen funds. The community reaction split predictably. Dad's supporters insisted I was destroying a good man over petty revenge. Others, seeing the evidence, expressed shock at how thoroughly they'd been deceived. The coffee shop conversations shifted. The Facebook posts changed tone. Dad's carefully cultivated image cracked under scrutiny. Jake's family situation improved when his dad landed a contract with the state. He apologized for abandoning me, explained how Dad had threatened to destroy their business. I understood. Survival sometimes meant difficult choices. We grabbed coffee, talked about normal things, pretended the last months hadn't created a chasm between us. Roberto promoted me to shift supervisor, partly from sympathy, but mostly because I'd proven myself reliable despite everything. The extra income helped cover legal fees. My co-workers, who'd watched the entire saga unfold, became an unexpected support system. They'd seen plenty of family dramas, understood that sometimes blood meant nothing. The forensic accountant's report was devastating. Over 13 years, Dad had diverted $127,000 from my college fund and family savings. The money had paid for the Riverside house down payment, private school tuition, family vacations I'd never been invited to. Every sacrifice our family had made, every time we'd gone without, had been unnecessary. Dad's business began suffering as word spread. Clients questioned his integrity. Partners reconsidered their associations. The man who'd weaponized reputation reputation found himself on the receiving end of small-town judgment. His relationship with Ms. Peterson ended when she learned the truth. She sent me an apology note, said she should have known better. The Riverside children struggled with the revelation. The boy who'd called Dad Daddy at the gas station now knew about the brother he'd been taught to ignore. Their mother arranged therapy, tried to minimize the damage. I felt for them, innocent casualties of adult deceptions. Mark and Sarah navigated the chaos differently. Mark maintained minimal contact with Dad, protecting his tuition while quietly supporting me. Sarah chose sides openly, moving back home to help Mom through the divorce proceedings. Our sibling dynamic shifted, scarred but not broken. The preliminary hearing arrived on a cold Tuesday morning. I wore my only suit, carried grandfather's evidence in a briefcase he'd given me for high school graduation. Dad arrived with his legal team, still projecting confidence. The courtroom filled with familiar faces, some there to support me, others to witness the drama. Mom's testimony proved crucial. Roberto's promotion feels like the universe's way of saying, here's your actual dad, the man who saw through manipulation and backed truth with paychecks instead of empty promises and dinosaur-shaped lies. She detailed the timeline of her confession, confirmed Dad had known about the affair years before his dramatic reaction. She described his calculated cruelty, the financial abuse disguised as righteous anger. Her voice broke, describing how he'd used their children as weapons, but she pushed through. The judge reviewed the evidence methodically. Bank records, property documents, school registrations, medical forms, each piece building an undeniable pattern. Dad's lawyer tried to spin it as a generous man helping a struggling family, but the timeline destroyed that narrative. The financial fraud was clear, systematic, deliberate. During a recess, Dad cornered me in the hallway. For the first time in months, he spoke directly to me without performance or pretense. He admitted nothing, but asked if destroying him would really make me whole. I thought about the dinosaur pancakes, the baseball games, the father I'd loved who might have been real once. Then I remembered the itemized bill, the locked bedroom door, the systematic destruction of my life. The judge's ruling came down hard. Dad was ordered to reimburse the full amount stolen from my college fund plus interest. The Riverside property would be sold, proceeds divided according to the fraud timeline. He faced additional penalties for perjury in his sworn statements. No jail time, family financial disputes rarely led there, but public acknowledgement of his deception. Dad's collapse wasn't dramatic. He simply deflated, the careful construction of his double life finally too heavy to maintain. His lawyer negotiated payment plans, asset liquidation, the mundane details of accountability. The man who'd controlled everything found himself subject to court orders and legal oversight. The aftermath rippled through our small town for months. Some relationships never recovered. Others, surprisingly, grew stronger through honesty. I started college that spring, older than my classmates, but grateful for the chance. The financial settlement covered tuition and living expenses, though no amount could restore the lost years. Mom thrived after the divorce, her career advancing once free from Dad's sabotage. She downsized to a smaller house, found peace in the simplicity. We developed a new relationship, honest about the past, but focused on moving forward. The guilt she'd carried for years gradually lifted. The Riverside family found their own path forward. The woman apologized through letters, trying to explain how she'd rationalized her choices. I didn't respond. Some wounds needed distance to heal. Her children would grow up knowing their father's true nature, a burden I wouldn't wish on anyone. 6 months later, I volunteered with a financial literacy program, helping young adults recognize signs of economic abuse. My story, stripped of identifying details, became a teaching tool. The pain transformed into purpose. Grandfather's evidence serving more than just my case. Dad started therapy as part of his court agreement. Whether it helped, I couldn't say. We passed once at the grocery store, both reaching for milk. He nodded, I nodded back, and we went separate ways. Some reconciliations happened in movies. Real life was messier, some breaks too deep to mend. I kept grandfather's final note in my wallet. His shaky handwriting reminded me that truth mattered, even when it hurt, especially when it hurt. He'd known the cost of silence, chosen protection over justice until death forced his hand. His evidence gave me what he'd never had, the chance to fight back. The scars remained. Trust came harder now. I questioned motives, looked for hidden agendas, struggled with cynicism, but I also recognized genuine kindness, appreciated honest relationships, valued truth over comfortable lies. The boy who'd believed in dinosaur pancakes and family loyalty had grown into someone harder but wiser. My college graduation felt different than I'd imagined at 18. No proud father in the audience, no family legacy to continue, but Roberto came, and Mom, and Sarah. The family I'd built through crisis meant more than the one I'd lost to deception. They cheered as I walked across the stage, diploma in hand, grandfather's dream finally realized. The warehouse job became part-time as I pursued my degree. Roberto understood, proud of my progress. My co-workers threw a small party when I made Dean's List, their faith in me unwavering through everything. Sometimes chosen family provided what blood couldn't. The financial abuse workshop expanded to 3 cities. I spoke to packed rooms about recognizing economic control, documenting evidence, finding resources. My voice grew stronger with each telling. The shame transformed into advocacy, helping others escape similar situations. 5 years later, I work as a financial counselor specializing in abuse cases. The irony isn't lost on me. Dad's betrayal led to a career helping others escape similar situations. Grandfather's evidence-gathering methods became my teaching template. Pain transformed into purpose, though the transformation took time. I still drive past the Riverside house occasionally. New owners painted it yellow, added a garden. The ghosts of Dad's deception no longer haunt that address. It's just a house where a family lives, unaware of its history. The past exists without defining the present. Mom remarried last year to a kind man who treats her with respect, watching her find happiness after everything felt like justice of a different sort. Sarah finished law school, specializing in family law. Mark works in finance, ethical in ways Dad never was. We survived, separately and together. The last time I saw Dad, he was loading groceries into a sedan, alone. Gray had crept into his hair, his shoulders curved with invisible weight. Part of me wanted to feel satisfaction at his isolation. Instead, I felt hollow. Victory over someone you once loved never tasted sweet. Subscribe for more, now!